Mashiach that. I mean, the fact that first of all, Russia themselves is one of the countries that signed a treaty that they're not going to use nuclear weapons. They're violating their own commitment. They made a commitment. It was Russia and the United States of America that made a commitment. So there's no question that they're violating it. But it's in between now and the way things were before, if a country attacked another country or used nuclear weapons, they did what they did. The rest of the world, as we know, was just quiet. Now is a time that we see the whole world is coming out against Russia, except for worlds that are still communist like Russia themselves. And that means that the world themselves has changed in the sense that it will not tolerate nuclear weapons. It will not tolerate being, violent in this way, being a bully in this way. So that's where we see the change. That's something that's happening now that didn't happen before. That now it's unacceptable. Even with anti-Semitism, there's a lot of anti-Semitism. The huge difference is years ago, if there was anti-Semitism, the city, the government joined. They were part of the anti-Semitism. Today, at least officially, the governments, the cities all over the world won't tolerate things that are done, which is anti-Semitic. There are people that are anti-Semitic. There are individuals that are criminals, that are bad people, and they do bad things. But the governments won't allow today something like anti-Semitism. That is a change. Never in the history of the world was it in such a way that almost all the governments in the world, except for the ones that are, third world countries, the Arab countries, the communist countries, all other countries won't tolerate such a thing. The only question is, it always comes up, if Mashiach is supposed to be coming, then why are there negative things happening altogether? It should have been so good now, because it's like when the sun shines, even before the sun comes out, it starts to get brighter and brighter and brighter. Why could there be bad things?
I heard, if all the government or majority of the governments are bad, Moshiach will probably come. If majority of the governments are good, then he would probably also come.
True.
Well, I think now majority are probably bad, so hopefully that means he's coming down.
Yeah. What do you want to say?
Maybe if the world is perfect, we wouldn't need Mashiach. Maybe this chaos means we really need Mashiach now.
But you also know that it depends on us how Moshiach will come in a peaceful way or through the wars.
Right. So that's one of the reasons why we're always encouraged by the Rebbe to do more and do more things. So only the good things will happen, not the other way around. But first of all, what you say is also a basis for that as well. That unfortunately, or fortunately, when things are very good, people forget that they need something bigger and greater, something more depth. One of the reasons in history, when Jews started to get weaker and assimilate, is when things were very good. Physically, financially, they rose to high positions in power. They became part of the government, like in Spain and other countries. That's when they started to, or even in the times of Purim, they started to assimilate. But again, there's a general concept, which is something which we find in Mitzrayim, exactly the same thing. I try to always remember this, that when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu came to tell them that they're going out. And who did he go to? Not only, he didn't say it as a secret, like in his sleep. He went to all the Jews. He went to Paro, to the king of Egypt, and he said to him, you're supposed to let the Jews out. Their time has come. You have to let them go out. What did Paro do? Paro said that these people, they're not working hard enough. So that's why they're thinking nonsense. I'm going to make them work harder and they'll forget about going out. And that's what happened. He made them work even harder. And what I'm telling you now is a story in the Chumash, not a Medrash, not Gemara, in the Chumash itself, that Paro made them work so hard that when Moshe Rabbeinu walked out of Paro's palace, they attacked Moshe. And they screamed at him. And they said, what are you doing? You're making things worse for us. You're making things so much worse than it used to be. You're making Paro think badly of us. So Moshe Rabbeinu turned to Hashem and he said to Hashem, why did you send me? Since you sent me, things only got worse. So we see a certain pattern of things getting worse before they get better. How do you explain it? Anyone remember any explanation we gave in class in the beginning of the year? These things that we talked about months ago, so by now you could forget.
Oh no.
So one of the Mefarshim in Chumash is called Kli Yakar, one of the main commentary on the Chumash. He gives the following explanation. And he gives three examples that we see. One example is that the coldest point in the night is right before sunrise. If it's a cold night, the coldest point is right before the sun rises. And the darkest part of the night is right before the break of dawn. That's why they call it the break of dawn. It's like a break of dawn. What do we use the term the break? Because it gets very dark and then that all of a sudden it becomes light. So the darkest part of the night is more at the end than before, right before the light comes. Yeah. Then he gives a third example. Unfortunately, there are stories, many stories of people that were sick. And at a certain point, they suddenly feel stronger. They sit up. They ask for food. And it looks like, wow, something's really happening. And shortly after that, unfortunately, they pass away. How does it make sense? That right before they're passing, that should have been the weakest moment. They suddenly appear to be stronger. And he explains it like this. He explains it that every force, of every person, everything in the world, when it feels threatened, it fights much stronger for survival. So basically, the human being is alive, and when the soul feels that, God forbid, something's happening, that the opposite of life is taking over, then the soul fights stronger for its life. It's what we call in English, is actually a term, the last fight for survival. You know that expression. And the same is with the day and night. When it's nighttime and the day is coming, the night, so to speak, feels that the day is taking over. So the night makes its last fight for survival, and that's why it gets darker. I mean, what's the night? Night doesn't have any brains, doesn't have any thought. But I guess we know that everything in the world has an angel that's in charge of its existence. There's a certain angel that his shlichus, his mission is that there should be night. And now the sun is coming and it's going to be day. So the last fight for its survival is right before the day starts. And the same is with cold and warm. That the cold has a shlichus, as an angel, his shlichus is it should be cold in the world. And therefore, when the cold feels that the heat is taking over, the cold fights its last fight for survival. The same thing with Mitzrayim. When the Jews were in Egypt, it wasn't about Moshe and Paro. This was the force of Klippa, the force of evil in the world, and the force of Kedusha. Until then, the force of evil was dominating. For 210 years, the Jews were slaves to Egypt. Egypt practiced sorcery. Egypt was the most immoral country in the world at the time. In the Chumash, it's called Erevas Haaretz, which means the most immoral country. And they were the ones which had the most power. And now, it wasn't just about going out of Egypt, it was about destroying their power. So the last fight for survival for Klippa came when it felt totally threatened. So we find that the evil became stronger right before it came down. So therefore, we see a certain pattern. And the same would apply to Golus and Geulah. That even though on one hand, I mentioned in the class last week, I was going to prepare it for today, and I don't know where it disappeared. I had a book that had all sorts of charts where you can see clearly how the world has changed in so many things. They write numbers, statistics, charts, it's clear, like mathematical, how many people in the last 100 years, how the world has changed in so many areas, in the area of food, in the area of health, in the area of how long people live, in the area of babies surviving, in the area of wars. You can't compare. You can see clearly, like I mentioned the other day about health, that today, hundreds and thousands of women who normally couldn't have given birth could give birth through different methods in medicine. Hundreds of thousands of people that their hearts would not be functioning through medicine is able to survive. A friend of mine had a problem with his heart. He went to a doctor, and the doctor put in I guess it's called a stent. And the doctor said to him, if somebody would come to me 40 years ago with this condition, I don't know, it would be a question of it even survived. 20 years ago, it was a big procedure in the hospital.
Wow.
And now you walk in the doctor's office, he does it, and you go back home.
Wow.
And so many other things today that years ago, there was no way the person could survive. And today, so we have heart transplants, lung transplants, kidney transplants. These are all things that are vital. You can't live without it.
Well, I was thinking in that, like how, for example, Abraham, he got his brit milah at 99, and like people used to live a lot. And then what happened that the old people, like at their 40s, they died, and was old people, and now we're living.
Going back again, going back up again. So basically, there's so many areas, like they have numbers of, unfortunately, years ago, a lot of babies died at a very young age because of the conditions. A lot of people died from infection, from all sorts of things. Today, the numbers is close to zero in so many areas. How many people in the world were suffering hunger? They have numbers. How many hundreds of thousands of millions of people suffered hunger? Today, the numbers are down to almost nothing. And the same thing with so many other things. So on one hand, that's there. In terms of Judaism, in terms of spirituality, we know that today we see hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world returning to Torah, to mitzvahs, also something which we never saw before. So there are many areas, also the fact that we have the opportunity to learn Torah today in a way like we never had before. Like I mentioned in the class, that today you have internet, and on the internet you can have the opportunity to learn anything in Torah that you want. And people live like that. They put on the internet, they learn Gemara, they learn Halacha, they learn Chassidus, they learn whatever they want. They have teachers, they can talk to them, they live. This one is in Israel, this one's in Australia, this was in Honolulu, and they talk to each other, things that were unimaginable years ago. On the other hand, there are other things happening which are worse, like the things we just spoke about. So the answer is, the reason why things are happening in a good way, in a positive way, is because we're getting closer to Mashiach. The reason why things are happening in a negative way is because the Klippa feels its last moments are coming, and this is its biggest strong fight for survival. Yeah.
I have two questions. Do you remember like about the COVID that, the Torah allows to ask people like about future? Because do you remember like there's people that say, before the COVID started, they knew that was going to happen. Can we ask that people when is Mashiach going to come, for example?
I understand. Explain me better your question.
I don't know if there's an answer, but
I don't know the question.
And
I heard the word COVID.
yeah.
Before COVID, after COVID.
Like I remember, for example,
Right.
This is very funny. Was an octopus. He said, really? He said who was going to be the world's champion, like soccer. And he was not great, the octopus. Then the octopus died. Then, like, what of people really, like, we talk about, like, they knew, like, when COVID just started, they were like, this is something that's going to be for a long time, and they knew like, can we ask? Because I know, for example, Torah doesn't allow like tarot or that stuff or things. If we can accept people, like, when is Moshiach going to come?
No, we can't use anything that's not a Torah way. In other words, if you have an octopus talking, if there is such a thing, that means you're using magic, sorcery. It's not normal. It's not a normal thing. And we're not allowed to use these methods. And plus the fact that what comes from there is not, it's something which goes against Hashem. So we can't ask such a question. And again, even tzaddikim, even when the Rebbe told us about Mashiach coming, he still never gave us a date, he didn't tell us when.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason is because we don't want it to be limited to a certain time. We'd like it to come as early as possible.
And then I have a question. It's not related to Moshiach, but it's more about like God, like.
He's connected to Mashiach also.
Like, because you were saying like Moshe said to God, like he was talking to God. And it's like day at day, like there's a lot of levels to like psychotic people or, like who are medicated because they think they can talk to other, I don't know. And yesterday, like I was studying and I was thinking like, but what if someone has it done to really be able to talk to God, like listen his voice? So how someone like in this world that we are so limited can know that this person is crazy or really has it done to talk to God?
Because generally speaking, again, I'm talking about from in Torah, it's impossible. It's not something which a person can do. God is infinite and we are finite. There's no way we can talk to God. No way we can hear God. The only way a person can be like that is if they're a Navi, a prophet. And the conditions for a prophet is somebody who is spiritually in a perfect place, which means his thought, his speech, his action is pure as pure can be. So if a regular person like one of us would say, I hear God speaking to me, that means it's something not healthy, it can't be something spiritual. I remember once I had somebody who came into 770 and he was telling me that what he believes. And he told me this is his own theory. I'll get to you soon, Sharon. It's his own theory. Anyway, I asked him a few questions. He had no answer. So I said, if you have no answer, then you have to give up on your theory because it's your theory. You made it up. And now I have a question. You don't have an answer. It means it's not true. I said, no, I know it's true. How could you know it's true if it doesn't make sense and there's a question? I know for sure it's true. How do you know for sure? I spoke to God and he told me. After that, the discussion ended. I have no point having a discussion with him. But who is this person? He wasn't. So for the only way a person can speak to Hashem, if he becomes like an angel, that he's so pure in his thought and his speech and his action, then these are people that are connected to Hashem on a higher level. But to be connected to earth and to physical and to klipa and to say I'm talking to God, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, Sharon, what do you want to say?
But you can have like when you dream that it's like transcendent, like you can have.
There are stories of people that had certain messages were given to them in a dream. They weren't talking to God. They were dreaming, and in the dream, from above, a certain message was given to the person. Yeah. What?
What is it yesterday?
Oh, we spoke about it yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
That about the humanity. Like, let's say, I don't know, a woman who passed in, a woman who survived the Holocaust, but his husband didn't. So, like, I don't know, years later, she remarried to like go on with her life. And then, when the humanity comes, she's going to be like in her house, like with her family, with the first husband and like all of her kids, and the second husband.
When Mashiach comes.
I saw in that, yeah.
I don't know. I never saw a clear answer to that. I can just say one thing. One thing is that when Mashiach comes, there's an expression in America, in English, probably it's in other countries also. One person's fortune is another person's misfortune. In other words, let's say somebody loses a job, terrible. But because of that, someone else now gets a job. Somebody gets thrown out of their apartment. Oh, someone else has an apartment now. So in the way the world runs is for one person, this is good. For another person, it's painful. When Mashiach comes, it's not going to be good for one person and then someone else is going to lose out. It's going to have to be that every single person will have the epitome of joy and happiness. How Hashem is going to work it out, I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave it up to him. I never saw it written exactly how it's going to be. It makes sense to say people will be reunited with their families that they love and so on and so forth. But it's too, what's written is written. What's not written, we can't make up our own ideas. And we just know one thing, that it's not going to be that anybody that's going to be living a life of sadness or unhappiness. Mashiach is all about happiness for every person, whatever they need. Not only one person and someone else will be sad because of that. So it can be. But how it's going to work out, I don't know.
And so I can ask another one. So people won't die anymore, but people will be born.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll have more coming from spirit. So we have more souls.
Do we have more? Every person will have more soul?
No, we have more souls.
There'll be more people, there'll be more souls, yep.
Before Ava ate the apple, the pregnancy wasn't painful. Do you think when Mashiach comes, in one day, the people will be allowed to have kids and no painful?
Yeah.
Really? No. Yeah, really?
I think it says so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Rani.
You just said that people won't die, they'll just be born, and also the people who pass throughout time will come back.
Right.
I'm sure there's a way to go around it, but would there be a problem with the crowding?
Space.
Yeah, because there's currently a problem in the world now, and people are dying. If people aren't going to be dying, then
How are we going to fit in?
Yeah.
So it's a good question. Where's there going to be space for everybody?
Right.
how are all the Jews to be in the shelter in Israel?
Israel is so small.
You have
They do, it's very small for the whole world.
So,
We're going to the moon.
well, that's why they're getting ready to go to the moon, right?
To make space for us.
Big space,
Wait,
yeah.
the other day they did the first trip to the moon and they got stuck in the
Oh,
space.
yeah? Really?
Yeah.
And
And I don't know.
it's still flying around.
And they didn't arrive to the moon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess we have to say that this is going to be part of a miracle that's going to happen in those days. In other words, if we say the dead come back to be alive, if that miracle can happen, then the other miracles are already, smaller miracles, like compared to the miracle of a person who died 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, should be alive again. So then it's going to be a miracle. It's definitely not going to be something natural that in the space which normally holds 10,000 people is going to hold 10 million people. So it's got to be something miraculous. Yeah.
How do we know that all this is going to happen? Because when we're learning about it, we're listening, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. How do we know that?
So the only things we can say are going to happen are only things that we're taught in the Torah, where it says that these are the things that are going to happen. So if it says in the Torah, that all the people are going to come back, so we know it's going to happen. If it says in the Torah that everyone's going to have a home, a field, they're going to be, living happily. So obviously, it's not going to be a problem that people are going to be on top of each other's head. Each is going to be a normal, comfortable living. So that means that this will be part of the miracle of those days. Of course, it's based on faith in what it says in Torah. Yeah.
We like we talk about a lot of science. We believe that the world is like, kind of like a circle. It has an over, and it's not like it's not flat.
You're talking about the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How we know that's true? The science just.
How do we know that it's true?
You think the earth is flat? No.
First of all, today we can actually see it with our eyes. When you go out of space, you make a picture of planet Earth and you see that it's round. It's not even a question.
Okay. So.
One of the things that are very interesting is that in the Zohar, which is written about 1800 years ago, he writes that there's a secret that only the Jewish people know, and the rest of the world doesn't know this yet, and that is that the world is round. Because 1800 years ago, that's not what people believed. But today, it's not even belief anymore. You can actually see with your eyes the globe. You go on your internet, and you'll see a picture of the globe,
I
right?
don't know. I think if that were that, like I would stand and see my house from the side.
You have a good eyesight, yeah. By the way, you mentioned something about science. I want to show you another area where you see Mashiach is coming is, what was the place which was the strongest source for denying God and not believing in God was really science. As science developed, that's when people stopped believing in God. We came up with Dorman's theory of evolution, and everything is based purely on science. And the more we learn science, the more people believe that everything is explained scientifically and so on. One of the things we're seeing today, which we haven't seen, and you can read this in articles, if you go online, you'll ask the question, you'll see what they'll tell you, that there's never been a time before in recent history that science should itself talk about God, or science should say that there are scientific proofs of God's existence. It was always considered God is belief. Science is truth. And now scientists are saying, from a scientific perspective, are saying that we have all sorts of proofs that God exists, based on scientific research.
Whoa, where?
So what I'm saying is that one of the things about Mashiach is that Hashem will be recognized by the whole world. So the fact that there is a place, this was the biggest source of denying God, which is science, that has become one of the places which actually prove the existence of God. Slowly, not every scientist believes in Hashem, but you'll see in science books and science articles where they say there's no way to explain this unless you believe there was like I remember when they discovered the DNA. There was somebody whose name was, someone in England. He was an atheist. In fact, he had a whole movement. He was considered the head of this whole atheist movement. And he made a statement. And his statement was that after seeing the DNA, he must admit that there is some sort of intelligence that created this. It's inconceivable that such a complex, such a complicated, such a brilliant system should come about by itself. In other words, studying science and discovering things scientifically became the source to support the existence. He doesn't daven 3 times a day yet. He doesn't put on tefillin. He's not even Jewish, probably. John Flew, I think his last name was Flew. But anyway, the fact that science is now bringing people to believe in Hashem is one of the revolutions in the world today, where we see that the world is coming closer to Hashem. I have a book downstairs. I'll bring it up to show it to you next time we have the class. It was written by a physicist, not Jewish. The title of the book is that this physicist proves the existence of Hashem, of God. There must be a God, purely based on physics. And he said he arrived, I know that it's physics, not religion, because I opened it. Any page I opened, I didn't understand the words. I know that it's physics, nothing else. And the method that he used to get to this conclusion is the exact same method that they use in anything that you study in physics. Purely physics and intellectual, research comes to the conclusion that God must exist and there must be something like the resurrection of the dead. That's what he writes. A book this thick. I'll bring it upstairs. And it was published by a very reputable company that published science books. They didn't just pick up like a sort of some fairy tale book. And this is something which is in the world of science. And there's only one. There's much more like that. So this is one of the ways where we can see how the world is changing and coming closer to Hashem.
I remember in one class it's more like it. He say that Mashiach will come like in a cloud, and seeing this thing that's happening in the smoke from there, I was like, there are the clouds coming.
You're talking what happened yesterday with the cloud.
But yeah. Oh yeah.
So I guess what we need to do for ourselves, first of all, is to focus more on the positive things, on the brachas, and the things we see in the world that are changing, which is definite changes for the good compared to the way things were years ago. I remember once this woman was speaking and she said that her babies are all born premature. And she said the progress in medicine is so amazing that she had a baby that was born recently premature, and the same baby, had she been born 10 years earlier, never would have survived. And now she's a healthy child and living a healthy life because there's so much things out there that are incredible. And the truth is, every invention that they make, and every time they make a computer that's more capable now with artificial intelligence, they have the capacity to make more things. And that gives you it's called exponential growth. More and more and more. And it's like the mind is blowing, it's bursting from all the new things that are coming up and the opportunities that we have today that we never had before. In Torah, in spirituality, in health, in finances, in so many different areas. Yeah.
If the Torah says this and this will happen when the Moshiach comes, then how come so many people believe the false Moshiachs?
Probably the people who believed the false Mashiach was, first of all, they didn't know all the details of, there were people imagine Mashiach is something miraculous, and if someone is performing miracles or very dynamic and they're telling miracle stories about him, they thought, okay, that's it. But there's a lot of halachas who Mashiach is and what he could be. And most people didn't know this. That's number one. Like, for example, one of the main laws that we learn about Mashiach is that he's a person that is governed by the laws of Torah like everybody else. And if someone comes along and says, I can do this or that because I'm Mashiach, that's unacceptable in Judaism. So a lot of people didn't know that. And that's number one. And number two, because in those days they didn't have the communication which we have today, a lot of it was distorted information, misinformation. People, it's all here. Imagine if you can have a broken telephone, people living in the same city. Imagine information going from city to city, from country to country. It was all very confusing. So number one, people didn't know and didn't learn about what Mashiach is supposed to be. And number two, people did not know the right information. In other words, even those that knew that Mashiach is not allowed to do A, B, or C, they never knew that he really did A, B, or C because they heard different stories. They didn't hear the true stories of what really happened.
What do you mean when you just say like Moshiach can't do this?
For example, one of the famous or infamous people who claimed to be Mashiach and was a false Mashiach, his name was Shabtai Tzvi. He lived in Turkey, and he lived approximately 400 years ago. And he was one of the most popular people that people thought he was Mashiach and they were following him. And in the beginning, it looked as if it's possible. But then he began to violate things in the Torah. For example, he was eating food that you're not allowed to eat according to the Torah. And when he was questioned, how come? His answer was, it's a deep mystical secret, which means he wasn't able to explain what he did according to the Torah. And then he desecrated Shabbos in many different ways. He specifically did things that go against the norm, and he didn't feel responsible to give an explanation. Sometimes something happens. Why are you doing this? Oh, this person's life is in danger. They're allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. But there was no explanation. The explanation was, I'm Mashiach. I can do what other people can't do. In Judaism, there's no such thing. There has to be a basis. So I'm saying he began to do one thing, another thing, a third thing. So some people said, nah, it's not true. People are making up stories. Some things people did believe, but they didn't know that this was wrong. So there was all that confusion. That's why they had this confusion. Once, what happened at the end? How did it end? Because he ended up converting to Islam. And when they asked him, how could you do that? That's like the lowest of the lowest. His answer was, this is a real deep mystical secret. This is like the deepest of the deepest secrets. And basically that's when the spell was broken. People realized that he's an imposter because a religious Jew would never do that. But until that point, people didn't know, people didn't realize. Once that happened, they knew it was true. It was very famous that he became a Muslim, and 200 other Jews converted with him. And a Jew converted to another religion. It's very clear that he's not a good Jew. And the same as with the head of Christianity. He also he violated certain things in Torah, and that's why he couldn't be Mashiach. And the same, there was someone called Jacob Frank, also someone who tried to present himself as Mashiach. So all those people that were false Mashiachs was because it was all the same thing. They all violated Torah. That's how we know.
They can convert to, or they say they are from that religion, but they are still being Jews.
They're still Jews, right? According to Jewish law, they're still Jews, but they're not following Torah. Yeah.
Do the Christians believe in Mashiach, that he's coming?
The Christians believe in Mashiach, and they believe that he's coming.
Do they believe he has to be a Jew, though?
But they believe that it's the head of Christianity that's coming back as Mashiach. Even though, I don't know if everyone remembers, I brought you articles here that came out in 1990, where the person who was the Pope at the time wrote a book. The book is in Latin, so people didn't have access to it. But I was reading a report in the New York Times of that book. If you want, I'll bring it again to you. I have it. Where he was saying that there is a possibility that maybe the belief that the Jews have about Mashiach, maybe that's what's really true. And people were criticizing, how could he say that? He's saying that the church made a mistake, and it was all up in arms about it. You know, they were very careful because it's the Pope. But the idea of Mashiach, they believe in, but they believe that it could be him, and he started a new religion. And that's not what Mashiach is. Mashiach is to reinforce Torah, not to start a new religion. Yeah.
For the head of Christians and Catholics too, they recognize God, but they also kind of like worship this person in a
Right.
sense.
Yeah, and no one, he didn't start the religion.
Yeah, he didn't. When Mashiach comes, how do we know that we're not going to be doing that?
Because Mashiach is supposed to be a tzaddik. He'll be like Moshe Rabbeinu and all the great Jewish leaders. These are people that nobody worshiped them. On the contrary, they encouraged us to serve Hashem with all our hearts and all our souls. They were just teachers of Torah, and they were people that the more people connected to these leaders, the more they were connected to Hashem himself. He only inspired them through his teaching and through his guidance and through the way he lived that we should be more connected to Hashem. In these cases, these people actually worship to the person and they pray to the person, and that's idol worship.
But if we're learning that when Mashiach comes, the world will be like this happy dandy place. What's going to stop someone from thinking, oh, the only reason that this is going to happen is when Mashiach comes, that when he is here, he is the reason everything is good again. And
because one of the things that are going to happen when Mashiach comes is that there won't be any more Yetzer Hara. So we'll all be thinking things in the right way. We won't have a force that's going to push us to be corrupt or distort things and not see in a truthful way. That'll be a time where godliness will be revealed, so we'll all see things in a true way. Okay, now you can go daven to Hashem.
Yo no soy persona, le pedí a Sofía que me traiga un jugo, pero tengo un frío. Mucho. Quiero comprar algo. Hola, bebé. Ya que contigo no sirve la labia. Muy rabia. No vas a poder, te lo digo a usted. Ella, no pegues un plato y conocerte. Es lo que quiero complacerte. Y no dejarte llegar. Para que estar contigo y contigo que quiero hacer travesura. Que no se vuelva una locura.
Да, думаю, когда шик. По не так пишется.